Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, and contorted epitomes to that 6+++ show. I am your host, Tom, back once again with the 6++ team to talk all things Warhammer 40,000 for you tonight. And tonight's a special show because I've got my boss, Wings of Goonhammer, on. We'll be introducing him in just a second. We'll be talking Grotmas, all these new detachments, all these new armies, this big Wild West meta that we're in at the moment, and how you can start thinking about and figuring that out. And spoilers, we don't have any easy answers for you because there's a lot going on, but that means there's also a lot to talk about. So that should be a lot of fun. Going to introduce our cast of players, then we're going to get straight into that main topic, save all the news and promotion for a little bit later in the show. So I'll start with my sensei, John, because my dear leader, Chris, has familial commitments. So, John, how are you?
I'm really good. I've played some Warhammer, and it wasn't
well
your
done.
team. So I can contribute actually something. I've actually played
Beautiful.
some Grotmas stuff into Grotmas stuff.
So what did you do, John? What happened?
So there was a small event up in Stockport at a place called Element Games called Northern Warlords Teams. It was 4-man WTC style teams. Really good fun. Myself, you, Alex, and Connor from the team went up.
Yes.
We took kind of our let's just see what we can do, vibe away through it, and I think we did mostly okay. It was good fun.
I felt like by the end, we were locking into gear. You know, I think those last couple of rounds on the Sunday, I felt like we had a really good system going. So we had, what did we have? We had you on your Marines. Yeah. What flavor was it you took again?
Bloodstorm. I'm going to keep calling it that, but yeah, Blood Angels, Ironstorm. So thought I'd go back to early 2024 and just be like, cool. Blood Angels into Ironstorm. That's good, right?
Absolutely. And you were running the Sanguinor around. Mephiston was running around. I saw some fun moments.
Try pointing tanks into Guilliman.
Yes, that was fun. The team had a lot of fun. I think we finished 2-1-2, so perfectly bang average, as is the 6++ way. I think gave a good account of ourselves in some really good teams. It's a tough crowd up at Element and Northern Warlords because there's a lot of the international teams to go there and try out. So well done to Alex and Connor as well. They're both absolutely fantastic, really, and thanks to Northern Warlords for hosting us. For myself, that was the same. I was running GSC. I had my first loss with GSC since they were nerfed at Northern Warlords, so that was good. Lovely game with Josie on playing new vessels. Super fast 8-bound, made my life very difficult, and they made a big long charge and gobbled up one of my rapid ingress units, which was greedy from me, disastrously good from her to take advantage of it, and that swung the game. But it was really, really good fun. Otherwise, GSC still feeling very good. I'll be interested to see what Wings has to say about them in the meta, which leads me, of course, to Wings. Wings, how are you doing, man?
I'm good, thank you. And thanks for having me on again. What have I been doing Warhammer-wise? Lots of rotating Warhammer in my mind. Not quite as much actually playing it as I'd like.
Yep.
Had to cancel, go to Nottingham for some work commitments, which was a bit of a shame. But I am going to go play a tournament this weekend. I am saddened that I didn't get to take pre-nerf Star Shutter out, so I've gone back to Panoptech Court instead to see it.
Oh, fun.
Trying to figure out. Yeah, I was just sort of looking at the metagame and going, there's so many different things to deal with. I haven't had I'm out of practice with Necrons. I've been playing lots of Aeldari in the last few tournaments. I was like, you know what? Just going to put some big Wraith bricks and a Catan down and see how it goes.
Yeah, I'll be very curious to see how you get on, because I've had a couple of Necrons players saying to me that they wonder about Canoptic Court right now. And I certainly know from my own standpoint, playing other armies, I'm always just very thankful it and Wraiths are not around. So I can imagine there's a lot of other armies and players in the same spot where if that does turn up, the proper lots of Wraiths sachet turns up, you're like, uh-oh, we've got problems. And of course, it does still have some wonderful tricks in that detachment as well, right? What's the event you're going to, Wings?
I'm going to the Winchester GT.
Fantastic. That's down the road from me. Yeah.
Traders.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah. So that's only about a 10-minute drive from my house, Wing. So maybe I'll pop in and say hello at some point.
Oh, please do. Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful. All right. We'll shout out the chat, and then we're going to launch straight into our main topic, guys, which of course is the Grotmas meta. We're going to pick Wings' big old brain and see what's been happening in 40k since all those wonderful Christmas detachments we got. Before I do shout out the chat, obviously hit the old like and subscribe. Do leave a comment on the video if you could. That's all amazing. Massive thank you to all the people who've been signing up as YouTube members for various different competitions we've been running. It's really cool. We're on our way to 90 members. We could probably hit it tonight if a couple of you fancy signing up. So absolutely do that. Me and Chris want to play 40k on a yacht in Monaco. So you could help us do that. That's a reasonable set of expectations, right? So who we got in the chat? We've got Risky, who's just become a member. Well done, Risky. We've got John C saying, let's go. Dante for PM is in. I think that's Sam. Martin Dorr is in. Pickleaxe is in. Zito is in. There's a lot of people getting excited about our TTS League, which kicks off very soon as well. Angron, who is Alex Fowler, is in. That always confuses me because he plays Thousand Suns. A lot of love for Wings in the chat as well. Glenn Connolly is in. Fozzie's in. Gordon showing lovely Gordy's in, and Marcus in as well. Fantastic to have you all here, gang. A lot of you say we know a meta overview is always a popular thing. It's no surprise. Maybe they're hoping that there's going to be some secret source here that they can all go and win loads of games with, but we shall see. Let's hand it over to Wings. I think he absolutely nailed this last time. I've learned that the best thing to do is pull the cord and let him run. So Wings, set the scene. Let's go. Let's get into it and see what's been going on. Yeah.
So I guess just to sort of talk through what I'm sort of going off to work with this, we gather data set every week to feed into competitive innovations, which is the results and the lists from all the events of GT size or higher. So that's 28 players or more. Obviously with LVO, this weekend was a very big one. So there were only 10 events, but one of them was the LVO, which means we had
big, yeah.
so we had just under 1,500 players across the 10 GT plus events, which is a pretty sizable data set. Obviously, there are lots of RTTs and stuff as well, but we're focusing on the GT plus, and that's where the data we're looking at here comes from. And the good news, I guess, is that it's in terms of win rates, and I think in terms of top finishes as well, to some extent, it's one of the most balanced meta games we've ever seen, which is really good. The highest win rate any faction hit this weekend in the data set I've just talked about was 53.5%, which is well within tolerance of what GW themselves talk about aiming for, between 45 and 55 for all armies. So I'm sure they'll be absolutely delighted if they're looking at this and going, pretty much nailed that. Obviously, there's nuances as you head towards the top and the bottom, and there's nuances in terms of who's converting good win rate to top finishes. Some factions that overperform their win rate in terms of top finishes, often things like Space Marines and Imperial Guard, which have very large player bases, but often still put down a considerable number of top finishes, as we saw with Space Marines at the weekend in particular. And maybe a couple of factions are lagging a bit, but really hardly any this time. I think the only faction I would look at the sort of results from the weekend and go, yeah, that's kind of unsalvageable is Sisters of Battle, who flew too close to the sun.
That would have been my guess.
And then got hideously overnerfed. Tau, I think, are also looking a bit, I would say Tau looking a bit dodgy, but not to the same extent. And there are some good performances from Tau players, whereas Sisters just clearly don't have anything to work with at the moment.
Yeah. So would you say Sisters currently standing out as the main casualty then? Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think the main casualty, and again, it's that eternal challenge with the sort of the lagging responses to what's going on, and also I think sometimes underestimating how much compounding nerfs at the same time will impact things. I think basically with all the other stuff that got hammered on them, making the miracle dice change as well was just way too much for Sisters, and it also meant that their new detachment's kind of dead on arrival because it runs off miracle dice. So I think I would hope who can play as most Custodes players. Sorry, I saw that in the chat.
That's John C asking which factions players can play.
Whenever Custodes players aren't on the top tables, Custodes players are asking why aren't Custodes on the top tables, and they're usually playing. No, the Tau player base have gotten better. Tau player base have improved over time. If you'd asked me that a few years ago, it would have been Tau. But I have to hand it to them. The Tau player base has gotten better.
It's all the ribbing they've had from the entire community going, oh, God, Tau.
Yeah, I think the Tau community have been very patient through an edition in which they've never really been gloriously busted, and I think they've stuck at it. So I think it's Custodes. It's interesting, isn't it? I guess I'm sure we'll get into it. But let's if we identify Sisters as probably our our please help example.
Yeah,
maybe if we start with the outliers and anything you think is interesting potentially as being a little too strong or looks a little bit ominous. Obviously, it sounds like there's not too much, but let's start with some of the heavy hitters, I guess.
Yeah, so I think the obvious ones that are on people's lips are Necron Star Shatter is obviously one that's had a lot of conversation, and that's just hit a nerf that landed just before LVO, but wasn't in effect at LVO. And I think so. Necrons are that faction that has the highest win percent for the weekend. They were the ones who were at 52.1%, and I think it's fair to say, and looking at the results, that Star Shatter is just a bit much for sort of mid-tables and higher mid-table players, and took down a number of event wins outside the LVO. But I think it is notable that you didn't see, we've had past sort of broken armies that come out, and then you look at the top 8 and it's half that army.
Yeah.
No one made it through into the top 8 with Necrons at LVO.
Yes.
You had one player in the sort of the upper end of the bracket. We had a few people who went 5-0 and then lost in round 6 to we were looking at this just before we started. So there were 2 people who went 5-0 with Star Shatter and then lost to Jack Harpster and Floof Cox, respectively. So that's the 3rd and 4th placed overall players. So very much respectable ways to lose a game. So they're clearly very good, but they haven't converted it into like, we are dominating everything. And I think particularly with the nerf, they should be fine at that point. I guess for you, it's not.
Oh, sorry, you go.
Mostly Star Shatter, but not all. There is still a few Hypercrypt people there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess Hyper. So that's all right. I think I'm a little bit out of sync with you, Wings.
Still some Hypercrypt, still some the odd Awakened Dynasty. I'm keen to try Canoptech Court, so I think plenty to play with there, but particularly with that nerf added, I'm not worried about them ruining the game or anything.
Yeah.
In terms of other lists that by themselves are really, really just strikingly pushing it, it's the Slaanesh Demons build is the other one that is right on their front. So Chaos Demons, second highest win rate of the weekend. And they're the one where if you look at the list that went undefeated, it's all the Slaanesh Demons. There are some people trying the other detachments. Some of them are doing fine. There is the buffed Demonic Incursion, which may also give that a bit more legs. But if you look at the undefeateds, it's all Slaanesh. They're doing very well. If you look at the builds and what they can get in them, I was looking at one just before we started this. It's like you can fit in 3 Keepers and Max Fiends and still all the utility stuff you want. And that's a lot of stuff.
What would you attribute its success to if you were going to try and pinpoint why Slaanesh is doing well, other than the volume of units? What's kind of fueling that detachment success?
So I think it's a few things. So I think it's very versatile because it's got lots of speed, and against stuff that doesn't fight back in melee, it can do atrocious amounts of damage. So if you come up against something like Bobby G with a bunch of Vindicators and Ballistas Dreadnoughts, you've got the numbers to just go through them because you can trigger the full rerolls and not worry about them fighting back. But if your opponent's coming at you with melee stuff, then once you add in all the defensive tricks they have, particularly the wound transfer, but also I think the tech of bringing a Torment Bringer to set up Fight on Death for the Fiends has been a really key one that people have figured out. We saw that from it was Dan Whitaker's build at Nottingham, and it was Will Whitaker, wasn't it? Will Whitaker.
Yeah, Will. That's right.
Sorry. Will rather than Dan. Sorry, Will. Will Whitaker's build that also had the Torment Bringer, and I think that's a key part of it because it basically just makes it such an uphill game for any melee list, of which there are plenty out there, that it's really, really powerful.
So in a meta that's skewing into melee and in shooting, it has nice tools for dealing with both, right? It's flexible. It can actually go and play into a wide range of armies.
I think that's it. Is you've got two really common skews we're seeing at the moment, which is melee pressure and lots and lots of shooty hulls, and it's got a way of playing against both of them. It doesn't play the same game into both of them, but it has answered both, and I think that's really key. I do wonder, there are some Hordia builds coming out. Maybe it has a bit more trouble with that, just because maybe it doesn't acquire the numbers. But I think the Fiends are so good into everything that at the moment it's probably I think with the Necrons taking a little bit of a hit, they've got to be the build to beat.
Yes, yeah, I think so. I think we'll see big things from Slaanesh over the next few weeks as word gets out about how effective it is, and it's, as you say, it's whether the really go wide bodies list can maybe drown it and sort of out activate it potentially as well. That'll be interesting to see. So we've got Necrons and Slaanesh. Who else is thriving? Would we say?
I think the remaining sort of one I think I'd tap as an outlier is Ultramarines and Deathwatch are the sort of two flavors of Marines, and obviously we saw that in the final, so it's not a hugely difficult call to make. But I think the other results we've been seeing kind of back that up. So we saw some really good results from Ultramarines and Deathwatch last week as well. Because Jack Tite won an event in the UK with Deathwatch, and we had Josh Roberts, who went to the top 8 LVO, running around with Ultramarines,
won the ITC,
and won the ITC,
yeah.
So I think the basic problem is I can see why they went with the +1 to wound thing for playing vanilla chapters, but I think the basic problem is that Ultramarines are not to any functional extent of another chapter, because Ventress, Calgar, and Guilliman are such good characters that you are functionally getting nearly as much upside as you do from a non-compliant chapter by picking Ultramarines, just because those characters are so good. So I think we've got the problem. The problem basically is that the +1 to win on top of that is too much. I think it's quite a difficult circle to square, because they don't like taking toys away once they've given them out. Yeah. And you don't want to be writing a rule that says if you buy and include this big centerpiece character for your faction gets worse. So I'm a little bit wondering how they don't tend to like just doing a straight revert of a change. So I'll be interested to see what they do about it. I mean, obviously you could just crank the points up considerably on
potentially just points on Calgar and Guilliman, right? That might do it.
Because they went Calgar and Guilliman certainly help on the change, didn't they? But it obviously clearly wasn't enough.
So I can't remember. They did all go up a little bit. And Ventress went up too. And again, it's not just Guilliman too, because the Ben Neal's list at LVO wasn't running it. He actually, I quite like his list in that he's cut Guilliman to just go wider with more small stuff. Again, you've got the situation at the moment. Be able to deal with skew in multiple directions. He's gone with cutting out Guilliman in favour of some extra eradicator MSUs just to give them those extra answers for tanks, and I think that's an interesting and potentially smart move. So Ultramarines, I mean, again, the sort of the standard issue Bobby G Gun Club list is just Bobby G, Calgar. Or sometimes Calgar, not always, but and then 3 ballistas and 3 vindicators, and that just blasts stuff off the table. You can run it in 3 different detachments, and it's good as all of them. Obviously, Deathwatch is much more exciting and interesting. It's back. It's new. It was clearly good. I think it's even better, clearly, than I originally had it pegged as. I think in particular, the element that I don't think I'd quite wrap my head around when I was just analysing it is how good at shooting the Talon Strike teams are. I think I think that's the killer factor there. Like everything else in there, like the really versatile Indomitor team, it's fairly clear. Like you get this lovely combination of very tough, nice shooting, good Overwatch from the Flamers, good melee from the aggressors. Nice, very versatile, powerful unit. That's really obvious, but the fact that the Talon Strike team, particularly because you can uppy downy them with the stratagem, are just so useful in shooting, is I think a sort of killer. Particularly if you choose to put stratagems on it, it's a killer factor. I don't think I'd quite sort of wrap my head around. So I started picking through lists with them in and going, "Oh, okay, I see what this does." Right? Yeah, this just flattens anything. And I think that's really really crucial to their success. And I think I would lean towards probably a bit much, but jury's still out, because again, Mark Hurtle won the LVO with them, but actually, if I'm looking at the other results from this weekend, no one really did much with them.
No, for sure. I think it's got real points of failure. I think it has real issues. But I think one thing we saw in a couple of Mark's key games was that he knew when to create space for himself by really being very aggressive with the army and pushing it out. I think it's one of those where, a bit like Vanguard, it can end up surrendering a lot of the board and getting connected into really badly. But actually, Mark did a really good job of mitigating that in some of the big games by just going and getting them, in rather than waiting for uppy downies to do the work. So I think that was well played.
Yeah, I think also his choice to use the Terminator MSUs was really smart as well.
Yes, exactly.
Similar to how Ben Neal was covering more bases, be able to go a bit wider just by cutting out, because other versions of this I've seen had a second Indomitor stack or a second Talon Strike stack, but actually you just take a couple of those Terminator units. They're crunchy to take down. You get a good shooting out of them because you essentially get to take Devastator Terminators because you're Death Watch and you're cool like that by putting missiles on all of them, and it just gives you a bit more space control and a bit more power. And I think that's the sort of the X factor from his particular version of it. That helped get over the line. I think particularly on the GW terrain as well, because that tends to, I think GW terrain, we're very used to UKTC over here. I think the GW maps is just, particularly if you're playing lots of different ones, as they will have done over the course of LVO, I think there was just a bit more need to be able to just stand something somewhere sometimes, and just having stuff like Terminators is
completely.
So I think that was a smart choice, and I think that's why he did so well. Obviously, he's also extremely experienced, very good player too. He's shown up in the column many times. So I think those are the ones I'm watching. The fact that other people just couldn't make it land quite as much as he clearly has.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe it is answerable. I think once people really get to grips with the Talon Strike team, people are just going to find it's just not a particularly fun thing to have to play against.
It's really quite a phenomenal amount of output. Yeah, it's quite horrifying.
We'll see. And I think really those in some ways those are the only like really stark upward outliers. There's plenty of nuance and things to talk about with other things, but actually they're not. Then compared to other metagames we've seen, as I said, this is one of the most balanced we've ever seen. There's all sorts of stuff people are doing. I think probably there is Space Marine overrepresentation. Clearly, if you sort of look at results and you look at who's at the top, probably a few too many Space Marines, but I would say that I'm a filthy Xenos lover.
Yeah, I'm with you. I feel the same. As soon as they're up there, I want to knock them down. So if we think about, I guess in terms of Grotmas, obviously we're kind of centering in on some of those options as you've described very much are Grotmas, but Marines perhaps more of a revitalization through the slate. But a few of the others that I know there's a lot of hype around, names that come to mind would be, the Tactical Brigade for Orcs. I think that's one I heard there's been a lot of buzz and noise around. How are the Orcs getting on?
They had a fantastic week last week. They were one of the most dominant factions. This week, kind of meh.
Kind of meh. There you go. Yeah, interesting.
Last week they were really properly dominant, and again, Tactical Brigade was the standout, but it wasn't just them. Again, there was some new spins on Bully Boys. Was there another one? I think there was at least a new spin on Bully Boys. I think there was one other one I can't remember off the top of my head as well. Oh, it was Green Tide. Of course, it was a Green Tide.
Oh yes, Green Tide.
So last week, Orcs, you suddenly looked like out of nowhere were just whoa. Orcs are hundreds of them. But this week kind of meh. So obviously
it's interesting.
Things change week on week. Different people bring different things out. It certainly had some decent showings with Orcs, but last week they looked like a faction to beat. This week,
absolutely. Any others of the sort of chasing pack that are worth?
Well, so the other interesting one I think is the quick drop off in really top finishes from the Astra Militarum Bridgehead strike. Like again,
that's interesting.
Not bad this weekend by any means. Quite a substantial number of 5-1 finishes at the LVO. Some decent finishes elsewhere. Won a small GT somewhere else as well, but again, a few weeks ago, it was the first week it was all legal. Everyone was on Bridgehead Strike. It was the big options, but it's fairly quickly adjusted down a bit. So I think that is an army where you can learn to play against it. Like it relies a lot on your opponent not necessarily spacing things correctly. And I think people are still iterating on it as well. There were some quite interesting versions of it bouncing around. I think the version with 2 tank commanders is probably my favorite, and that seems to be the one that's doing best now. So I think as people get to grips with that, they'll still do fine. But again, that from the first week only, you would look at that and go, "Ooh, have we got something a bit spicy here?" But no, it's fairly quickly normalized back down to something that you can handle. And obviously, there's changes to their rules coming soon. Their books I don't actually know when they're fighting.
Saturday,
They haven't.
The box comes out.
The box comes out, but they haven't announced when the actual.
So they'll be a little longer, won't they?
Yeah,
I think.
So they'll be around for a bit more. So we've got to think about them for at least a while longer. So yeah, I think they're in a perfectly fine place. And I think the other one that was sort of an early outsider, Solar Spearhead. That was where I was going to go next. Yeah. So that is still putting up some very strong finishes, but again, didn't really do much at LVO, which I think was a little bit surprising. I would have expected to see more of that out and about at LVO, but I think it's a very good list. I think it plays quite well on UK style terrains as well, because the dread bodies are quite small, so they can navigate around the boards pretty well, but they get easy to hide. I think we'll see plenty more of it. But again, it clearly is one of the better builds out of better established out of Grotmas. It's very good. It's probably, I think, at the moment, just looking at it's the best performing Custodes list, but not like not the exclusion of everything else. You've got balance builds, you've got shield host builds coming up as well.
Yes, I saw Stephen Box took bikes and infantry shield host, didn't he, to RVO? I think I don't know how he got on.
Yeah, he went 4.5, 1.5 by the looks of it.
Nice, very nice.
Which is very respectable. And yeah, like it looks like just cramming a couple of two bike model units into shield host is a notable and perfectly nice upgrade on them. So that's nice to have a bit of variety. But yeah, again, I think people may find an optimized version of it, but there's lots of different things being tried. It's clearly good, but it's not throwing the metagame away.
Yeah, I think the pure dreads felt a bit gatekeepery to me, and the sort of the tricks amongst the the getting back up again dreadnoughts and baiting people onto it and everything else. And then they are tough to kill, but there's certainly things out there that can get through that. And I guess potentially it's so as says in the chat, says perhaps Solar Spearhead might have issues in a world where people are already prepping for 6 2-up save vehicles in the Ultramarines list. There's certain things that will be able to go out there and bop them.
I think they do it a little bit differently, just because they can fight back in melee. I mean,
yes, that's true.
It's different. It means it's very different kettle of fish against something like Slaanesh, where they can just bully Vindicators or Ballistus Dreads, but the Custodes Dreads, like, they're not going to kill a whole unit of something, but they'll do some actual damage back.
They'll take some fiends with them. Yeah. And we've got a shout out from Micah Burnoff in the chat for Grey Knights, which was a faction people were very positive about, and there was quite a lot of noise when Warpbane Task Force came out.
They are they're ticking along. They've had a clear bump in performance. They are there are lots of X1 finishes, one event win this weekend. So they're ticking along just fine. Again, they're doing better than they were. The new detachment has clearly improved them. But it's such a nice flat balanced meta game that you're not seeing that translate into they're winning everything.
Yeah. I mean, it feels very powerful, Warpbane. It's certainly got some volume tools for some of the other SKUs we're seeing. So it might even be it has happier hunting as people try lots of Orcs or lots of Guard or whatever else. I feel like it will quite enjoy those kinds of lists if it can get guns on them, and purgation squads, etc.
It's very adaptable. There's not really anything it can't interact with at all, which is nice. I think maybe the 6 2-up save vehicle Ultramarine list is the problem for that one. Just because I don't think they have the reach to immediately dunk them down. So I think that might be what keeps them down at a sort of more flat finish.
Yeah, completely. We've got we can field this shout out. Risky asked, "What about the mighty Hearthband?" Leagues of Votan. Go on.
Just open my little dashboard. Do I have any notable finishes? No.
Does it exist?
There are no notable finishes for Hearthband and T-Whip. Let me have a look at Hearthband in the where are they? Leagues of Votan.
Digging deeper.
Literally zero. No. There are 42 League of Votan players in our data set, and every single one is rolling Oathband.
Oh dear! And is Votan at least holding on okay with the Oathband?
Let's have a look. Where are they in the win rates? They are smack bang on 50% win rate. So
oh, where they live. That
has pretty much been the story of them for the last year or so.
Yeah.
To be honest, they just truck along middle of the road.
Yeah,
in their little trucks.
Yeah, very happy.
Do you think with factions like that, because they're so kind of in the middle, they don't then kind of get pushed further because someone like, to use Tom as an example, he's currently enjoying his GSC because it's really interactive and it's probably slightly better. As a result, then there isn't that player to then push it a little bit harder as well?
Yeah, that's a valid question, I think.
Yeah, I think there'll be elements of that. And I think it is interesting that if you look at the really top finishes LVO with various marine builds, all of them have got some little bit of special sauce or something that the player has put in that they've clearly worked out to go the extra mile. So you've got you've got those Terminator MSUs for Mark's Death Watch list, which I haven't seen anyone else go back to much. You've got the swap out of Bobby G for just a bit more board coverage with the Ultramarines, and then you've got Jack Harpster's really interesting Blood Angels build.
That's definitely worth commenting on.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. So I think I'll just finish answering that question first.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so I think Votan. I think the other problem. I think Votan are also kind of rough for it because they don't have very many data sheets. You say it was with World Eaters as well. Like you do see some amount of list variety with Votan, but it's kind of what you see is what you get.
It's
know
hard.
what you'll get. You know what you're getting with it.
Yeah.
There's so many. There aren't really many angles you can push them. So yeah, they're kind of a solved problem. And same with World Eaters. There's a one true World Eaters Berserker Warband list. And you can try other things, but you shouldn't. And my nuclear hot take there is that for World Eaters that does include Vessels of Wrath, and this was one of the ones where I made some predictions a few weeks back of who would do well and who wouldn't. Some of them I went a bit out of lib on, and I was more pessimistic on Vessels than most people. But that prediction has played out. I clearly underrated Death Watch, and I think I should have been even hotter on Tactical Brigade than I was. But Vessels of Wrath, people tried it. There were some okay finishes, but there were three undefeated finishes for Berserker Warband. Berserker Warband running really strong this weekend. And so it's just you don't need
just do the thing.
I'm afraid it is still just correct to play that one true World Eaters list.
Yeah, I've played against Vessels a couple of times because people took it to Northern Warlords, and I think into certain kinds of things it brings a real
maybe in
certainty
I think,
in teams. But I agree that in singles, I think its ability to punch up into hard targets probably isn't quite there. It runs through infantry pretty happily with the very, very quick bigger bricks that you can guarantee with it. But I think it's just it's not got the versatility, right?
I think in a world with Legion of Excess as the top build too.
Yeah.
You really need to kill what you hit.
And
the Berserker Warband just does that better. Whereas if somebody told me to play Vessels of Wrath into the full Slaanesh nonsense, I wouldn't be keen.
Yeah, absolutely. I will just quickly field a super chat. We've had a lovely super chat from Raven Guard fan Bonsai Kitty Gaming. Lovely to have you back in. Thoughts on Whirlwind, double Whirlwind, triple Pred Destructor, 1 Hammer Strike, 1 Hail Strike, 2x3 Arads, and 6 Bolt Inceptors as the base for a 2K Raptors fluff list. It's a lot of tank. What do you think, Wings?
I think for a fluff list as Raptors, you want some sort of melee jump unit. Like
you've got to have Vanguard.
Get a squad of Van Vets or a squad of
Shrike.
jump hits.
So you have Shrike and
Strike's not Raptors. Strike's a
of course,
paint him green.
Yeah,
it's fine.
But there were quite a lot of nice things you can put on a jump captain to upgrade. I think if you're doing a fluff list for Raptors, you need to be doing something with the
load up enhancement from Vanguard is fun.
Yeah. And I think probably for the pushback in that list, it would benefit as well because that is a lot of tank. So I think you're going to want something that's going to push people back as they come.
But also I think if you're playing that for a fluff list and you want it for casual games, you're going to find some people who aren't thrilled to run into just whoops all tank.
So maybe some Phobos to back it up, just to lean into their kind of sneaking around angle, I suppose.
Yeah, Shrike and 5 JPI sounds good, Bods. Like it again.
Yeah, that's a good start.
Nice,
yeah,
that's a nice addition.
That's a nice addition. Yeah,
absolutely.
Actually, apparently actually, there's another real surprise. Reavers are a real unit again. Apparently,
yes. Let's talk about that.
Reavers are a real unit. Last week we had Inez take a unit of Reavers with a loose head to second place in Nottingham.
The Phobos one,
the Phobos one, because it gives them a fire and fade, and it just tells them just really annoying utility unit. Somebody I saw when it was I think I talked about this last time I was on, but basically my process for prepping the article for Wednesday is that I go through and do all the X1 lists on the Monday night just to sort of get my head around where the metagame is in general and where everything is, and then to give myself a bit of time to cogitate on the really top lists because they get a more detailed write-up. Right at the end, I found someone who'd basically copied Inez's list, except they'd added a second unit of Reavers with the
wild.
So
that's an improvement.
2 units of Reavers in an X1 list in the year of our Lord 2025. Truly, we live in an age of wonders.
But to be a real kind of meta cutting edge list, do they have Invader ATVs and Outriders as well? Because that seems to be a shift in the Marines at the moment, right?
I mean, Solar Invader ATVs is just a cost thing. It's like when got too cheap in
so
Nine.
Good.
They're just cheap. They're really cheap. There's lots of value always, particularly in a meta game where there's still quite a lot of deep strike around. There's just value in having a little body that can sit somewhere. Will die to lots of things, but won't just die to a stiff breeze and has some shots sometimes. They're really good at 60 points. I think
they really are.
See plenty of them around.
Yeah, I was curious, Wings. What's the overall sort of balance between the special chapters, as it were, and all this new +1 to wound oath goodness? Is that a sea change? Are we seeing most Marines players trying the boosted oaths?
So we're actually seeing a much better balance of that than I sort of. I think. I don't have the numbers to put that together straight away. I'd highly recommend StatCheck probably have that kind of breakdown. Again, the feed I've got is slightly more skewed towards the kind of data I need to prepare for competitive durations. But we're still seeing a good number of Blood Angels and Dark Angels in particular. Death Watch, obviously, on the LVO. And a few scary guys. It's mostly Blood Angels and Dark Angels outside of Ultramarines. Blood Angels because you get Liberator and either your choice of going Inez style +1 to wound without taking it into the data sheets, or you get the really good data sheets. And then Dark Angels have Deathwing Knights, which
they sure do. Which is still really good.
Yeah, well, there was a 6-month window where Deathwing Knights weren't really, really good, and there was a 6-month window in the entire last 6 years where you couldn't just slam maximum Deathwing Knights into a list and do something with it, and that was unacceptable. So
they fixed it. We've got some shout outs for the Lions Blade Task Force, and we can go there, but I think we mentioned the angelic host for Jack Harpster, so I think that's definitely worth talking about.
Yeah,
because that was not seen, was it, before?
So again, this is the one where we were quite hot on it, and I think again there's some real actual play here because it was I think in terms of a game design lift, the Blood Angels one was tough to do because the Liberator Assault Force is a really good all-rounder detachment. It's very, very strong. It does kind of everything you need, so it was a tricky one they're going to put in. But actually, I think the Angelic Heritage does give you some unique tricks, and Jack's list leans into them really well. So it encourages a bit more of a go wide setup than your sort of Liberator, because you don't get as much benefit out of going deep on really big units and then just stacking stratagems to steamroll something. So he's got lots of small units of Sanguinary Guard with various nasty characters, some small foot units to cover the boards. But I think the things he really leans in on, I think what makes the detachment stand out are the extra shooting threats. He's got some ways of making really, really nasty shooting swings happen. In particular, he's got a full Inceptor brick, and you can bring them in, give them sustained hits, give them the reroll ones to hit as well if you want to, and just go completely ham, which... having that kind of shooting capability, particularly when there are other strong melee lists around that you might struggle to trade with positively. Like if you're up against Slaanesh, you're very, very happy that if you've got that. I mean, obviously they might try and throw the no shoot me at you, which is scary, but you've just got to make sure you set them up so they've got multiple targets. So you got that, and then the other clever one he's got is the Foot Devastators, because you can just Foot Devastators with the Librarian, because you can just say, no, you can't shoot me. 1 CP, no, you can't. 1 CP, 18-inch loan off on them. They can just stand out in the open with the las cannons, rerolling once to hit and wound, blasting away at stuff, tipping stuff away. They also have nice synergy with the sustained hit strat, because they can sort of pretend to be Eldar. They can go, oh, I'm going to turn on sustained hits. Oh, I've used my once a game signum. That one's a 6 now, and I've got a second las cannon hits, and just smash something out. And that actually is just a really neat little package on the foot, and it's really cheap for what it does. And again, it's just about, because there are skews in so many different directions. Anything that you can do that just means you've got game into everything is really good for you, and that extra value there, I think, is really key to.
I agree.
Do as well. So I think that was a real standout and a really smart use of the detachment.
Completely. Yeah, I'm going to shout out my teammate Sam, who says there'll be more play from it coming. Sam, these are the kinds of calls that are much cooler if you make them before Jack Harpster goes deep at LVO. But I appreciate you nonetheless. I hope I'll see you on some version of it soon. And yeah, I think it was sustained in a rerolls army is just always a good tool to be able to push in there, and Blood Angels have lots of ways to hurt people, so I think being able to do it in different ways is definitely useful. So yeah, I hope we see a bit more of it. It'd be cool to see that and Liberation Assault Group both pulling people in different directions, because we never really saw the loads of Inceptors uppy downy detachment in the end. That was a meme. It didn't really happen.
Yeah, and you can do the uppy downy in this one with them as well. Essentially, if you want to do that sort of shooting thing, this is where you do it, and it just gives you a lot of value. So it's a very, very strong detachment. Really nice,
nice, certainly. And Space Wolves got a few mentions in the chat. They seem to be dropping off a little bit. Is that a fair assessment?
I still saw some wolf jail lists as I went.
Oh no,
so they'll a bit more balanced than just pure wolf jail. But yeah, I think they're not doing anything the best anymore. They've had enough rounds of nerfs now that and there are enough close engagement viciousness to lists. Yes. Their thing isn't as good as it was. Again, even just like the Bobby G Vindicator list, it's like, oh no, 18 Thundercavans and characters have come towards the Vindicators. What will we do?
Yeah. Oh no, how's that -1 to wound working out for you? Not so well.
I basically don't think they can handle that level of shooty stat check that's out there at the moment. So yeah, they're having a bit of a rough time.
So I guess there's a few noticeable absentees from our conversation so far that it's worth picking up on. We'll start with the old CSM, the Creations of Bile. That's another detachment, had a lot of hype around it, and obviously CSM in general have been quite an established force now, but have been very dominant for a while. So I'm curious where they're lining up at the moment.
It's slightly quiet this week, but they're doing fine. They had a player in the shadow round at LVO with.
Yep.
Oh no, sorry, no. They had we've had a slightly quieter week of creations. We had a top 8 finish for Pack-Bound Zealots, actually a classic all hull.
My OGs,
the all hull spam things build, and a top 8 finish for the Chaos Cults as well.
Okay,
nice. So we had that, but in general, Creations of Bile has been trucking on pretty nicely.
Yes.
A bit of a slightly underwhelming week this week, though. It is definitely noticeable drop off from last week. For them.
I wonder if that's a similar thing where it's an all-in melee army in a world where Slaanesh exists. Might be a slightly ropey time for it.
Yeah, I think Slaanesh is probably hurting it. And again,
Keepers must love Chosen and Possessed, right? If they can start doing work on them,
Yeah, and I think also actually you're seeing there are quite a few people back on. Plasma receptors in various builds as well. We've talked about those in a few places, and those are very good into the chaos lists. So,
yeah, completely. And the elf bias in our fan base is starting to show through, because Ben Pierce is asking for another hotly anticipated detachment, and I know which one he means. Let's take it to an elfy place, because the elves have been neglected. But Drukhari, we had obviously one feel-good story for the Drukhari, but how are the Drukhari looking more widely as well? Obviously, Skari, very well done to him, proving he is the true Archon by going all the way.
lots of X1 finishes. Still struggling to convert that into really, really impressive finishes other than Skari. I did find one really amused me. So a thing that I had to come and ask you last week, because you played with the list that I haven't, is it really worth running Weaver's Wager if you've literally only got one Harlequin unit? And the answer is apparently yes, because the strategy is really good.
Yes.
And that's kind of, or you get your big blowout from one unit, and that's fine. Well, this week we've got a 4-1 Reaper's Wager list that came third at a GT that has no Harlequin units. It's literally just a Drukhari army. It has got it has got the enhancement Conductor of Torment that lets it reset, basically.
That helps.
And I've kind of thought about that, actually. If you think about it, that kind of basically means you get sort of, if you're careful with it, you get a sort of pseudo oaths.
Yes,
you're careful with your ordering. You're kind of a little bit limited in it, because you probably do trigger it in shooting. But I guess you could think of it like you basically just use that to set it up, so you got rerolls 1 to hit and wound against something until you kill it. So as long as you do your prioritization right and kill that thing first, I guess I can sort of see that it's
absolutely
actually. It's not. I just thought it was funny and a little bit depressing, if I'm honest. This is the detachment that you get to do cool Drukhari and Harlequin allies, and we are bringing 0 Harlequin. Okay, great. Love
I think chatting with other Archons, the feeling was the suite of tools in Reapers is amazing, and like it's a bunch of things Drukhari haven't had. Like, being able to get sustain in different places makes a huge difference. Again, Thorill's army sustained. It's not complicated. It's very powerful. It can make things like Talos and Grotas a bit better because they really like advance and charge. No Overwatch is very powerful as well.
No Overwatch is vital, because it just means that some things like, I've played against Lilith and Witches before, and I've taken out, somebody walked them into an Overwatch they probably shouldn't have, and
then they're gone.
It was my Necron Immortals with some rerolls, and it was just like, they're actually, you could charge them with Lilith, Witches not so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, completely. And I think that's it's interesting. Obviously, Oscari, I think, went with Sky Splinter still for his run there. So he was probably just building more into the tried and tested and some of the keep away things that gives you, because Reapers is more of a I'm coming at you than a keep away.
Yeah, I mean, he actually had a very all rounder list. I think he's just so practiced and experienced with a faction that he just knows how to make everything do the absolute best with it.
Yeah.
Because he has some interesting stuff. He's got his Void Raven to shoot stuff. He's got a Talos unit, and he's got the Raider pack with racks to ram into people and trigger.
Yeah, that was interesting.
People seem to have swung a bit towards that instead of Incubi. I think, again, maybe there are just too many things out there that kind of blank Incubi. They don't do well into anything with fight first. But if you just take a bit of everything, you get the reliable morsels out of the stratagem with racks, nice and easy.
Yeah, makes complete sense. As I say, I think we'll wait and see what Harlequins look like in the Eldar book when that arrives, and that might inject a bit of life there. Speaking of Eldar, obviously we can't speak too much of Eldar because that's for the future. That's for the seers. But are they doing anything right now? And is their Grotmas detachment doing anything right now?
The answers are yes. The answers are yes and no, respectively. They are similar to Votan, slap bang in the middle of the win rates. Very, very, like a fraction of a percent behind them at like what's this from? What have I done here? I've done something. Oh, it's a team's event. Sorry. Slap bang in the middle. Plenty of 4-1s. Not many massive breakout performances. They've been clipped. They've been ticking along okay. They had a strong second place at one of the 6 rounders at the weekend. That was their top finish. That was with that was within an Nari list, adding a few. Actually not lots of huge stuff. Just a few Cabalites and Venoms for lots of board control.
Yeah, so more MSU.
Yeah, more MSU. So there are things that work. I took them out the last big event I went to before Christmas, which was Leicester. They were good fun. I went 4-1 with them. They seemed fine. I think they're a 4-1 army at the moment, but they're sort of ticking along the middle of the road fine. Who knows?
Who knows? That's one for the future.
Yeah,
I'm trying to think what else we've got left to cover. There's a few Chaos deep cuts. We've touched on World Eaters, obviously Thousand Suns and Death Guard, slightly differing in terms of their Grotmas attachments. I'm curious if a Death Guard that felt like that might at least make some waves.
So I mean, Death Guard So somebody went undefeated with it this weekend. So I was that list just before I came on. So that was with Max Poxwalkers, lots of Death Shrouds and Mortarian, just march forward, smash stuff. You've got the Terminator Sorcerers to take advantage of the full reroll strat to dunk something. So that's fine. Mostly people are just running the index attachments though, because it's still just pretty good. Like it's been really solid. There were 2 very strong finishes. 2 people in the shadow round with the LVO. Very different builds as well. You had Don Huson on a very, very heavy duty Demon Engine build. And then who was the other one? Jeffrey Stenquist on a very infantry focused build. And then I think there was a third build that had a bit of both. So really, so Jeffrey was on the very heavy, lots and lots of Plague Marines and Rhinos and some supporting them. Basically, Plague Company is just a great all-rounded attachment, so it's quite hard to knock off the top. But somebody did take Flybone Host out and go undefeated with it. Congratulations to them. I think that was a good play. I think the Plague Company is better.
I agree.
I think you're kind of stunting if you're going out and doing Flybone Host. That's not a reason not to do it. That's why I spent most of the back end of 8th taking a Wraith Knight out, because I was bored of 8th edition. It's fun to take out cool things. And clearly there is enough there to make a list that can go undefeated. Great, but I think if you're serious about winning, you should just take Plague Company.
Absolutely. And Thousand Suns, obviously, I'm not anticipating there's going to have been much take up of their new detachment. But how's the old Wizards getting on?
I mean, TJ Lanigan came 10th at LVO with them, unsurprisingly. Because as I put in the write up for him when I was going past it, people will try us to double mute, so there's lots of character lists out of his Cold Dead Hands.
Still very much the model.
Still very much real. Otherwise, middle of the road, win rate, a couple of X1s outside of TJ, but nothing really big, not really big splashy finishes anymore. So again, I think they're basically a 4-1 army now as well. I think. Which, again, I think they have more upward spike potential for the people who really know what they're doing with them, like TJ. But I don't think they're not the terror they once were.
I think that's completely fair. I think they like one half of the meta. I think they like those Here Are My Tanks. They can delete those a couple at a time. They don't like the I'm going to run over and kill you.
Yeah, they don't like getting properly bodied. And they're another faction where I'm just quickly skimming through. Literally no one is playing their new detachment.
Yeah, it's a shame.
In the GT
it just doesn't give you the same juice, does it?
It doesn't do anything. It's like it's half of it. You look at it and go, oh yes, that will work really well with the Thousand Suns ability to. Oh no, wait, that's a stratagem from the other detachment. That isn't a thing Thousand Suns just do.
Yeah, absolutely. We have had some shout outs that have reminded me that the Hive Mind have been somewhat neglected thus far. So let's talk Tyranids and Bioform, the Warriors.
Warrior Bioform. Very middle of the road win rate. I mean, obviously everything's fairly middle of the road, but they are
especially
very close to exactly 50%. They had some good finishes. A few X1s, a 5-0 at a team event, a couple of decent finishes at LVO as well. No outright event wins though. Mostly people, a good mix of stuff, but no one's playing Warrior Bioform. Somebody took it out the first week and did well with it, but it's not quite got the juice. It doesn't. You don't. I think it doesn't help that. It doesn't help that the other detachments are really good too, and you've got Assimilation Swarm newly upgraded. I think actually upgraded Assimilation Swarm is very real. So if you haven't already worked out what that does, you should probably be aware of it. Someone took that to the shadow round at LVO. With I think that was 2 big bricks of Tyrant Guard, I want to say.
Yes, it's like a sort of a very durable skew, isn't it, in the Assimilation Swarm and regen and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, you get your regen, you can take your 2 big bricks of Tyrant Guard, which are frighteningly cheap. And you get a bit of shooting behind it. This was 2 big bricks of Tyrant Guard and one with the Swarm Lord, one with Hive Tyrant. Good amount of regeneration, big shoot yourself and throw unit behind them. Actually, very nasty. And I think and the invasion fleet builds are still very viable. Vanguard Onslaught, someone had a great run with them until they ran into Mark Castle's Death Watch.
Which feels like a disaster for them.
You look at it was the absolute all-in. This is Nathaniel Bjorg in the US.
It's that wonderful Vanguard list, which is just this is going to run at you en masse, right?
It's the absolute all-in. I am going to throw 30 Gene Stealers and various giant snakes straight at you, straight away. Can you do anything about it? And you look at his results, it's like 197, 100, 100, 150. Right at the end, he ran into Mark Castle's Death Watch, who were like, yes, we are professionals at dealing with that. That is the whole plan, is the monsters run towards us and then we shoot them.
Yeah.
He sees them and goes, "Someone phone an ambulance
for
you."
So hopefully, at least he appreciated the thematic nature of his undoing.
Oh,
I mean, it's definitely the thematic way to go. It's it's the Death Watch.
Oh no!
The fun police here.
Keeping it, exactly. This party's over. Keeping it hive mind. Where are GSC at? And also, I'm very curious to know to what extent Final Day is breaking through. I've heard a lot of stuff about Final Day. My gut feeling has been that Bio remains more all-rounder than Final Day, but I'm very curious what your data says.
So we had obviously a top 4 finish at LBO from Fluff Cox with a very Horde of Ascension build.
Yes.
Which was 110 Neos, characters. I think that was really smart list design because basically it leans into how the new reanimation works, is that it just goes lighter on the acolytes, knowing that you can guaranteed revive a couple of units of them. And it's 110 Neos, so you've still got that overwhelming force. More Benefictuses in there than you'd normally have. So you can still really just blow people out of the game sometimes. Because I think one of the things you always want if you're trying to win something like the LVO is you want a list that gives you some free wins. Basically, in the nicest possible way, you do want to be playing a list where sometimes your opponent just doesn't get to play, really.
You're just going to get hammered.
And that's where you see the big skews in the reviews, because it's a dice game. You can always have bad luck. The fewer games where there's not even a chance for you to get bad luck and get crushed out of it, the better. So I think that really overwhelming list makes sense for the LVO. Really well played to take that there. Really impressive finish. And I think it plays really well into the change to ambush. Nick Nanavati did well with Final Day a few weeks back and did take his Final Day list to the LVO though and went 5-1 with it. So that
makes sense.
I mean,
it's definitely got some tricks, doesn't it?
It's Nick Nanavati, so there's always a bit of there's some player skill thing going on there, but it's got some stuff going on. It's quite a shooty build. Goes heavy on the the last version did. Is this the same version? Yeah, heavy on the Ridge Runners. Got some nasty melee threats from Pure Strains and Metamorphs. It's got 1 unit of Aberrants, so he can revive them if he wants to. It's kind of it's a fairly all-round build. With a skew towards shooting and just some fast Tyranid stuff to get out there and give him the +1 to hit. It seems to be working well for him. I think it's a pretty good build. I think it's different to what the other Gene Stealer builds do as well. I think it does give you a nice sort of in between the kind of Rusted Claw style and the Biosanctic style.
Yes, it's got more teeth than Rusted Claw for sure, but it still has that kind of OC control, which is really nice.
Yeah, and you don't have to be moving around 110 models like you do. Host of Ascension. So I think it's a good army. It's clearly not like busted or anything, but it's playable. And I think Nick's
absolutely
essentially if you want to try that army, just go look at what Nick's doing and try that, because I think it's a good place to start it.
Completely. I'm trying to think if we've missed anyone. I think we've gone through a lot of it. Is there anything
a lot of people?
Anyone else not covered? Imperial Agents doing anything exciting?
I went 4-1 with them last week.
Hey, there we go.
Let me pull that up.
Good for you.
That's right.
We did skim Lion's Blade. I'm curious.
Yes.
I personally, my vibe at the moment is that people are still Stormlancing and Gladysing, but I'm curious what the data does say.
I'm underselling it. 2 people went 4-1.
Oh my days!
Hey! Wow!
I could tell because if I look at last week's data, they're top of the win rate because they only had 3 players and 2 of them went 4-1.
Oh shit!
So, which is why you do have to a little bit keep an eye on the numbers when you're trying to assess these things.
Absolutely.
So they had Imperialist fleet with all sorts of fun and games. Yeah, it's Imperialist fleet with Deathwatch kill teams to push forward and infiltrate. Some blocks of infantry,
lots of pockets, Sam. Yeah,
lots and lots of infantry just to go up the board. So you basically you slam the kill teams forward. They're really nasty. You've got infinite units and scoring to go after it. You grind people out. You go 4-1. You love
it. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing.
And then
10 arrests. Sorry, you go.
Admech was being asked about. And Lions.
Yeah, I was going to say. So, Lions Blade and Admech, I think that will probably get us there.
Yeah. Admech, bleep, bloop.
How many
a couple of okay finishes. There was a 5-1 with Halo Screed, which was on just going wide with lots of and I quite unusual actually. 2 Archaeopteryx Stratoraptors.
Oh, hello.
That's a very interesting one. I've not seen those.
I don't know that I like the sound of that.
I'm getting real bad flashbacks.
No, that's uncomfortable. I don't. Yeah,
yeah.
I must admit, I think that list's in your half, so I haven't had a chance to dig into it.
I'll have a look at it.
That sounds like your problem, Tom.
Yeah, that sounds like your problem. Good luck with that.
I might just try and downplay that, and so no one picks up on it.
That. Mostly fairly quiet. Other than that, I mean, I think they're probably their win rate has bumped up a bit from where they were before the data slate and the changes. I think Halo Screed is helping them. It gives them a second viable detachment alongside Hunter Cohort. I think it is like in terms of measuring it in its own merits, it's a good Grotmas detachment. The faction started at a very poor spot before it. They are just over the 45% win rate mark into the sort of the GW zone of desire, but not by much. And I would say, unlike some of the other ones here, they don't really have at the lower end. They don't really have a string of others because the things below them are all stuff where their win rate is slightly lower, but they've got some undefeated finishes or some top 4 LVO finishes or whatever, and that means you kind of at that point can go, but there is a way of making this work, whereas no one is quite breaking through with Admech.
That's
maybe if anything, actually they probably are the second faction after Sisters who still just conclusively need some help, which is a shame because they've had a lot of it.
They really have. They've been juiced up an awful lot. And then I think it was just Lion's Blade, wasn't it? Just seeing if that's popped up anywhere.
Does anyone care about Lion's Blade?
I fear not.
One moment.
Because the problem is, like, the thing the Lion's Blade kind of encouraged you to do is to put bikes in. And if you're going to take them in Stormlance because they're now a bit more viable, perhaps that's kind of distracting it.
Yeah, the answer on Lion's Blade is some people have tried it.
It's not gone well.
It's not gone great for them. There are plenty of people doing very, very fine with Gladius Task Force. There are Stormlance, Lion's Blade.
It exists.
I'm not sure I'd recommend it.
Oh man, there we are. Okay, guys. I mean, I think that's our immediate run through the sort of the options and some of the new Grotmas things. So do keep questions coming because we'll go to podcast questions in a little bit. So if you want to chuck us a question or indeed a super chat, we like those. We've already had one. We're greedy for another. Then feel free, and Wings will obviously answer those as well. I guess Wings, I'm going to do the thing I always do, which is the thankless question you can only fail to answer, really, which is where's it going next? What do we think we're going to? What do we think we're going to see?
I think we're going to see. I don't know.
It feels really hard to call right now.
So I think the steer I would take is that unless you are Slaanesh, you do need to be skewing back a bit more towards shooting. I think the really successful Space Marine lists at LVO, the top builds, even the ones that have a melee plan, we're packing at least one really big, I bring down the shooty thing and then your stuff dies, like the big Inceptor brick with sustained hits, or the Talon Strike kill team. And I think armies that can't do that were having more of a rough time of it. I think that's my takeaway. I think the other, it does look like Berserker Warband is the other melee list that can still just go ham and YOLO it. Like they still have event wins, they've still got undefeated finishes, they've still got really strong performances because they just hit so hard that they can actually play that game. But I think basically, unless you are literally World Eaters, the Slaanesh melee build is so vicious that you need to at least, you can have melee in your plan, but you need to have a plan B of making one of their units go away before you start fighting them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that would be my instinct. Yeah. And I think Ork do that well with Tactical Brigade as well.
Yeah.
So even though they had a rough
and Warhorde as well, potentially.
Even though they had a rough week this week, I think the Tactical Brigade lists play really well into that kind of demand. I think there are Necron builds that I think Necrons may struggle a bit with the fact that it's always been a bit tricky with Necrons to build a list that can take on everything. Yeah. Which is sort of a demand right now. And I think Star Shatter, the best Star Shatter builds pre-nerf could. And that's why one of the reasons that really helped push the others to the top. I think they may be back round to. You'll still see plenty of event wins with them. They're still a good army, but I don't think they are. I think the demands of a really skewed metagame are sometimes tough for Necrons.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's going to be the undoing for a lot of armies, right? It's like ultimately it's going to be a bit of rock paper scissors, needing a bit of luck because you can't skate through all of these different things at the moment. There's a lot of stuff going on. We did get it mentioned actually in the chat, and I think it is worth coming back to that. We've seen the creeping in of infantry indirect again through purgation squads, through desolation marines, through mortars for guard. There's been like a smattering of that going on, which is, I guess, worthy of note in recent times.
Yes, I think a bit of ignorance can be helpful, and I mean, do I think? I think the challenge I have with it is that it doesn't do that much if you run into Whipsaw tanks, which is a concern. And I think the guard mortars in particular were a real sort of arms race between a lot of top players who landed on, we're all going to play Bridgehead and we're all already checking for each other. Which is fine, because in those first 2 weeks, that was what you needed to be doing. But with Bridgehead dropping off a bit, I think it's still useful to have some. I'm less. I think stuff that can punch up a bit, like the field ordnance batteries and the desolation marines to an extent, fine. I guess it is also useful if you're worried about Slaanesh as marines, then you having a desolation squad to just take off their Daemonette unit with the epitome.
Yes,
it's an option.
For sure. I think it's low investment, isn't it? And I think the running theme that you links all three of those.
I mean,
well, yeah, but again, I think the thing that links all of those is that they will just do your backfield screening and holding as well, right? They can be involved in the game whilst doing that.
Yeah, I guess actually, I guess a fair point there is that the part of the reason is probably also because 3-inch deep stroke's gone away.
Exactly,
because you couldn't get that dual function from them when you had 3-inch deep strike, because something could just appear right behind them if you were trying to screen out with them. So you're right. The fact that you go back to getting the dual value of they are also sitting on your home objective and screening it out does add a lot.
Completely. All right, John, you had a question.
So the vibe I got from kind of the data as a whole, as you're kind of bringing it down, kind of from a layman's perspective, it very much felt like if your army isn't the big daddy of, say, combat, or the big daddy of shooting, you're better off being an all-rounder army. That's what it felt like to me. Like, your build should be, if you can't do Slaanesh level combat, be a bit more all-roundy so that you can deal with everyone else, because you're not the top dog almost. That's the impression I'm getting.
I think that seems to be, I mean, again, this is high-level ruminations from the data, but yeah, I think it looks like armies that have a heavy melee, a heavy, fairly pure melee plan that aren't Slaanesh or World Eaters are having a rough time of it. So unless you're that level of good at melee, and again, you see that with even like the best performing Blood Angels list being Jack's more balanced Inheritors list with the shooting threat rather than pure melee. I think if you can't go that hard on it, you do want to be considering a bit more of a balanced build and not just hoping you don't run into them if you want to in the event. If you just want to go X1, which is what most people are looking for, really, then just take what you like. It's very balanced, better game. You can play whatever.
Yeah, it's very healthy. I think that's the thing, isn't it? I think from an army standpoint, there's so much in play. So that's really, really cool. Right, I'm going to shout out. We've got another super chat from Bonsai Kitty Gaming, who's back in the list lab. We've got Gravis, Captain, Shrike, Phobos, Lieutenant Combi. This is already so much better, Bonsai Kitty Gaming. Heavy Intercessors, lots of Scouts, lots of Bolt Interceptors, some Incursors. Incursors really good right now, incidentally, especially with the kind of things you're running.
Plus to hit is so
Pred Destructors, Hailstrike, Thunderstrike, 2 Whirlwinds. Yes, that's feeling...
That's better, yeah. The Thunderstrike.
That's feeling way happier.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, I like that. A very good friend of mine and John's that we've played with a lot in the years gone by is a Raptors fan, so I've got a soft spot for Raptors. So I'm sure you'll have a great time. It's a lovely scheme, although it is not as green as the Marines I'm currently painting, and I want that on record. Okay, we've got a couple of podcast questions coming through. We will move to that in just a second, but we're going to have our little break, which involves me doing a tiny bit of self-promotion because we're very good at self-promotion, possibly the best. And then John has a couple of lore snippets for you, and we've got a tactical tip. Then we'll take it home with the questions. So keep those podcast questions coming. And obviously, we're greedy for super chats now. Our blood is up. So if you want to chuck us some more, we'd hugely appreciate it. So self-promotion. This is 6++. We're having a big year. We're working very hard right now. You may have noticed. We'd love you to like and subscribe. We really, really appreciate all the support. Keep those comments coming. Everything helps us to soar in the old algorithms. If you want to sign up as a YouTube member, support us that way. We are on our way to 100 members. We're going to try and hit it in the next month or two. We'd love you to help us get there. That would be fantastic. I'm going to shout out Davey for running our King of the Ping TTS League. That is about to start. We've got 40 people in it. It's going to be absolutely amazing. I'm running Salamanders because I'm an idiot, and I'm really, really excited to do that. But we're also going to be launching a painting competition. We've been running this the last few months. If you are interested in joining a competition in our Discord to paint the best monster or vehicle, we've gone big this time, then get signed up on the YouTube as a member and come join us in the Discord. We've got some incredible painters. We'll do a little award show at the end. There'll be prizes for best monster, best vehicle, and coolest conversion. I'm going to do something Salamandersy for that, I reckon. See if I can get some effects going, and it would be really, really cool to have you there. As far as promo goes, we've got tons of videos coming out. I'm making a bunch of them. Scrivo's making a bunch of them. We've got all sorts of different things. There's guides on Khorne Berserkers, reactive moves, different trading units for different factions have come out. Scrivo's done an event report from his Warhammer World trip with the Risen Angels. And we've also got some cool members videos coming out on how to fix Codex Space Marines. That dropped this week from Scrivo as well. The big news from the live streaming standpoint is Thursday, where our very own Davey is going to be facing off with a certain David Gaylard on TTS for our TTS Fight Night. That should be really fun. I think they're playing Nids into the Astra Militarum. I believe it's going to be some classic Tyranid Catachan nonsense of a showdown. We love Dave to bits. He's a big fan and friend of the show, so we're really excited to have him on. So tune in 7:30 on Thursday night if you want to watch that. And obviously, a little reminder, we've still got our GT happening March 15th, 16th. And there's still some tickets left for that. So if you're interested, come find our Facebook page and there's links in the description and you can get involved in that GT in March as well. Come play a WTC event with us. That's all the self-promoting I can think of for the time being. Oh, the usual reminder. Myself, Chris and Ed are also offering 40k coaching and mentoring. If you're interested in that, drop us a message and we'll get you signed up. I think there's a question in the podcast chat about it, so I'll unpack that bit towards the end. All right. That does it for self-promotion. There's a lot of stuff to promote. We're very busy men these days. That takes us through to I Fought the Law and the Law Won, Scribo. And I understand that you've got something for us today.
I do.
That got a laugh out of Wings. It's been worth it. I've been saying that on this show for 2 years, and it was so rare.
I just tried to acknowledge it.
Throw that at me out there. I'm easily amused.
It so rarely gets a rise. People just don't do anything.
We're all sitting here going, "We get it, Tom. Well done." Jeez.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going around. Right, take us through it, Scrib. What we got?
Right. So this is going to be probably a part one of two. Because I'm going to do a little bit of a story time about a fellow called Cipher.
Oh, nice.
So, if you go back to the early sort of history of the Death World of Caliban, there was the Knightly Order that referred to themselves as the Order. One of their most prolific of their order would be given the title Lord Cipher. They would then not ever use their original name. It would become basically what they became. This tradition then carried on when Lionel Johnson was found there, kind of took over the order. and slowly transitioned into the Dark Angels. His first of his Lord Ciphers that he gave the title to was actually a very young sort of knight that was rumoured to actually be part of not the Order originally, and was potentially a knight of the what are they called? I've already forgotten the name. This is awful. Oh my goodness, let me just find it here because I have it next to me just as crib notes. Oh, this is awful. Let me cycle back to it. So there was rumours that he was actually part of the actual order that Luther found books from that were basically not quite chaos, but basically chaos. I can't find the Order of Lupus. There you go, the Knights of Lupus. I've remembered it, and that in itself meant that there was a lot of questions when there was sort of some of the kind of Luther's kind of murmurings of sort of betrayal and stuff. He was cut down by one of the other knights, and it's very much a title that then carried on. It's rumored that the current Cipher could be one of the librarians themselves that had fallen to chaos, but we don't know the full answer of that. So that's kind of the origin of it. And then I'm going to, next time I'll kind of touch on what happened in the 41st millennium.
That is actually very, very interesting. I did not know the sort of deep history of the title.
It's not just a name of a mysterious guy. There's a bit more.
I'm guilty of just thinking about him as a little Chaos Lone Up and forgetting that he's got Dark Angels roots. I forget that quite often.
He used to have our keyword too.
Alrighty, and we're going to move it just to our little tactical tip for you guys.
Ooh.
And this week I'm talking about secondary pockets. This is a UK TC tip. My advice for you is the secondary pocket on particularly the Crucible deployment, but to a lesser extent on all UK TC deployments. There is a nice little snug just outside your deployment with the little box ruin on UK TC, which is perfect for a small model, preferably a lone up, to do almost all the secondary cards that require actions. I'm thinking recover assets, we're thinking sabotage, we're also thinking containment. It's worth sniffing it out and finding it, and it's worth having a unit in your army that fits in it, because having a scoring piece that fits in there, and it does have to be small, is really, really useful. My lists of late at UKTC have had 2 Sanctus in, and their whole job is sitting in little snugs like that doing actions. I hear a lot of people saying, oh, if you get recover assets, if you get sabotage, just throw it away. And it's like, you do not need to. You can very much have the tools for it in quite a lot of matchups, as long as you've got something small, unassailable, that can slot in that secondary pocket and get things done. So that's my tip for you today. All righty, we're going to move it to some podcast questions. I will start with the 2 we had in the chat, but obviously chat, feel free to keep them coming, and obviously, super chats, very much appreciated. We have 2 questions from John C. Number 1, when is Scrivo returning to Darkfire Cafe? Scrivo, any ideas?
When they bring back dairy-free food options.
Whoa!
So, joking aside, I'm actually going to be there hosting potentially a Kill Team event at the end of next month.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fantastic. Just very exciting. And
at the moment, so.
And it's the venue for our own team invitationals as well, isn't it, John?
Yes,
so
which has not been publicly announced, but they in the next couple of weeks should be appearing.
Yeah, absolutely. Very exciting. Number 2 question was, what does coaching with 6++ look like? We've been doing coaching for 9 months now. We currently have about 20-25 mentees signed up. It's been really, really fun. Myself and Chris have worked with those, but we have wonderful Ed Watts returning from his Anvil Siege Force 5-1 at LVO to also join us in the coaching program. Ed is a beautiful maverick, and he will make you better at 40k. I can promise that much. Coaching is it varies a little bit depending on client, but obviously it involves calls discussing and plotting factions and lists and events, and helping people really sharpen up their game, working in on things they want to develop on. It's a little bit of support, it's a little bit of encouragement, but it's also sort of helping people make breakthroughs in mistakes and thinking as well, and sort of trying to offer all the sort of macro and micro game knowledge that we can offer as well. We do TTS games and playthroughs and deployments and stuff as well. It really depends what individuals need. But what I would say is they've been a blast to do. We've got people from all around the world taking part in it, and it's a lot of fun as well as being really useful. So we've seen a lot of people make real strides There's been a really pleasing number of sudden event result upticks that are obviously very gratifying, but also people have had a very good time playing the armies they want. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, just drop us a message on the old Discord. Alrighty, do we have any other questions coming through? Oh, yeah, Ben Pierce is coming in. Oh, everyone's decided they're getting 2 questions today. You are greedy people.
Cheeky.
Greedy people. I'm going to start with the question for Wings, because I've been talking for ages. Is there going to be a functionality in the Tabletop Battles app to filter your stats for detachments as well as for armies? That's an interesting question.
I've been cheating, and I read ahead in the chat, so I have dropped that into our one of our app development back in the channel, asking whether that's a possible feature. So I haven't had a response yet, but I'll see. I'll see what happens. Last time I got a play to feature request was sorry. Forgot to tell my phone not to remind me about the bins, which I've already taken out. Remember to take them out before the podcast. Didn't remember to turn off my alarm. Last time I got a play to feature request, which was when I played against someone with Imperial Agents who wanted to be able to pick Imperial Agents in the app. It got done straight away. So fingers crossed. I've put it in. We'll see what comes out. Thank you for the suggestion.
Yeah, and I can tell. I know Ben Pierce quite well, and Ben Pierce has been doing better with Reaper's Wages, so he wants to skew his results so he can reflect on his recent run with the faction. I'm telling you, that's exactly what that is. I love you to bits, Ben. You've been playing really well with it, so I hope we get that sorted out for you very soon. Podcast question 1 from Ben was: if you had to make a 5-man teams lineup with only Grotman detachments, what would be your 5? That's a fun question. Who's getting in there?
A fun one, isn't it? I did again. I went and had a quick look at the detachments to try to work it out. I mean, I think so. I think with teams, you're always looking like either really great all rounder things or things that do one thing really well. So I mean, I definitely start with Slaanesh. Like, there's no way I wouldn't be going out with probably the 3 keeper, 3 fiend brick build.
Yeah, that's in there, right?
I think that's just I think that's probably the biggest lock of any of them, I would say. And I think probably the second biggest is that for teams, I would be going in with the 3 Telemon, 3 Vendread, Solar Spearhead build. Just because I think you get a lot of value out of having one really tough brick wall in teams, at least. And I think that's of the stuff that's in Grotmas, that's probably the closest you've got. You could probably do something similar with Grey Knights, but I think I'd prefer to go with the Solar Spearhead. After that, I think it opens up a lot. I think those are the only 2 I would 100% lock in. I think I'd be... If I had to... I think quick picks for things that you can skew really well. Bridgehead would certainly be in consideration because in teams you can dodge the matchups with Space Marine. There'll only be 1 Space Marine list in each enemy team, so there's only 1 army that's going to have infiltrators. Just dodge that, and then you're in a much better place. So probably that, because it's just, again, it's such a big, nasty skew. And then what would I fill out with? If we're counting Death Watch. If we're not,
I think we count Death Watch. I think we do.
If not, I think Librarius Conclave would also be teams. I would definitely be. I'd be slabbing that in, and maybe. Do I think over? Probably not over Death Watch, just because the uppy downy shooting in Death Watch is so valuable. But I think Librarius Conclave is a real detachment. I'm slightly surprised we haven't seen more of it. And I think in teams, it does the ultra nasty Sternguard brick that just kills anything. That's something you really want in teams, because it means that if your opponents have come up with some sort of giant tar pit that isn't, a bit more widely spread, then you can just counter it. So I think that's such a strong counter piece that I'd be very, very hot on them in teams. So that leaves me with one. I guess maybe throw a curveball. I might go with Tower Auxiliary Cadre just because of how well they score.
Yeah. I think that as a light board picker as well is really brutal. I've played against it a couple of times on lighter boards, and it's powerful. And I think the auxiliary, we didn't really touch on it today, but it just gives you that little bit of jank for mission play, and it gets the best out of some of the things like the crew talks that give you other ways to affect the opponent. I think it
scores so well too that in teams you're very unlikely to get like 20-0'd with it. So
yes,
and it gives you a nice sort of defensive pick there.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really solid 5. I like that. I think Tactical Brigade could maybe sneak in there for the Orcs. That's an option.
The Wreckers and Busters with the damage 3, right? It's just in that field it feels neat.
Yeah, the Busters with the War Bosses are a particularly nice thing because again they're another thing that just answers kind of anything that's I guess the fact that there aren't that many really durable options that are good, like neither of the Knight armies are good.
No.
You're kind of for stuff that's really tough in it, and yeah, Northern Knight was good. The Guard detachment doesn't encourage tanks. The Marine detachments don't encourage vehicles. I think if you're looking at what the field is there, you've really only got Custodes and Grey Knights where you've got lots of vehicles you want to be smashing up.
Yeah, completely. Ben Pierce feels like I've called him out. You'll notice he's not corrected me there. So Fuzzy says, trying a Dread Heavy Solar Spearhead list in the King of the Ping this time. Considering I haven't played a single Custodes list ever, what's the best piece of advice you could give me?
I've got one.
Go on, John.
Just roll 4-ups.
Yeah, there he is. He is. Oh, nailed it. Just be good at Warhammer, Fuzzy. Put the army in the middle, roll more 4s.
That's your coaching session for the month. Done.
So, I mean, with Custodes, the answer is always you need to know when you've got the momentum and it's time to put the boot on the enemy's neck. Yes. Basically, with Custodes, the way strong players beat weak Custodes players is if the weaker Custodes player is too precious about their stuff once they get ahead. If you get the momentum with Custodes, you go you go hard and you keep the momentum because it's really difficult. Because everything's got a 4-up in Van, really hard to chew through quickly. There's always going to be a certain amount of drop off in the damage that's being dealt to them, and that's particularly true of your Solar Spear. I'm sort of assuming you've got the Feel No Pain Telemon. That's a really nice, really nice thing to be pushing as a sort of central piece. You've got the Wardens who can throw. I assume lists are locked by the sounds of it, but. But yeah,
he'll be able to amend them. So the lists are in tonight, so you can adjust.
Okay. I mean, I think at least a unit of Wardens with the Blade Champ still really good as well. You haven't already got completely. That because you want that advanced charge threat, and again, the advanced charge out, and then they throw up Feel No Pain for the crackback, and that's just really good. But yeah, the key thing, I've certainly played games against Custodes players where I've sort of got, I had no business winning the game, but they just did not put the boot on the neck when they were ahead, and they just gave me that space to pull back and keep scoring. Because you do tend to have fewer drops than the opponents, so if they can just keep a few things alive, they can spread out. So it's keep track of when it's time to stop worrying about the counter attack and just go for it to keep the momentum up.
Completely. Yeah, I think that's really sound advice. I think for Solar Spearhead as well, the Contemptor Dreadnought that stands back up is a really useful piece because you can push them early, force the opponent to try and kill them. They're getting back up. It then brings them out onto your other guns. The Telemon, as already mentioned. I think the bikes in MSU are quite interesting. One or two of the bike units, they are an awkward profile for a lot of armies to deal with right now because they're building for infantry or they're building for tanks, and bikes are sort of neither. So there's lots of stuff in there, Fuzzy, and it's as Wings says, it's about learning when to go. I definitely have plenty of games against Custodes where a little voice in my head at about turn 3 goes, and you're not killing them now, and you have to win the game the other way because it's not happening, and so you have to take advantage when it hits that moment. Okay, I think that's it for questions in the main chat, although do keep them coming, guys. If you think of anything else, I'm going to go and fish some out of our podcast questions in the Discord as well. If you haven't joined the Discord, there's a link in the description. We've got just hundreds of nerds in there having a great time. Come and join. It's a lot of fun. So, an interesting question from 10 who asked, MEQ is one of the standard things we think of guns comparing against, but is that still relevant? The last few Space Marine armies I played had maybe 5, 10 or 15 bodies that matched that, but then everything else is either T5, T6, 1-up saves on objectives, or some combination of other altered or improved stat line. Do MEQ bodies still exist in any meaningful quantities in the game? And if not, is there a current standard profile for non-T3 infantry?
That's an interesting question.
I think it really is, yeah.
No, do you want to take that one first?
I think it speaks to, in my head, what it's speaking to is the way they've just added more variation across toughness profiles and wound profiles in the game since, say, 8th, right, or 9th, where it felt like there was a lot more of the 2 wound 3-up save guy, and now we've got a much wider range of things like T6 Gravis and these kinds of things, or the addition of a lot more sort of -1 damage and Feel No Pains to throw off the maths on these things. but I guess there's probably still a broad marine killing territory to be in. I don't know what you think, John.
There's over the course of the weekend, I found my Flamestorm cannons and my Bowl Predators kept going to things that were toughness 6, 3 wounds, and a lot of them. So whether it was Locust Destroyers or stuff buffed in Bile, it seemed to be that kind of point where my normal guns that would have gone into those toughness 4 bodies wouldn't have cut it.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like that's a bit of the flavour of the month is that, but I think that's often because people are trying to make that kind of awkward for their opponent. They have to then fix their kind of gun profiles, because I traditionally had been going for either big las cannon stuff or small stuff. I wasn't doing any of the bit in the middle, and I feel like if you don't bring those sorts of guns now, you're going to struggle. Like when I went into the Necron player, he was trying to shoot stuff into my little bodies, but it was basically shooting his Doomsday Ox into toughness 4 bodies. It was such a waste. It was like, oh cool, I'll kill 3 of them. So I guess it's picking the right gun profiles for the kind of the meta at the moment, which I feel kind of leans into that a little bit more now.
Yeah, I think I probably would actually end up on the side that I don't think it is relevant anymore. Because I think basically, I think that everything you guys have said is absolutely there. But I also basically think that vanilla 2 wound Marines as an alpha unit just does not happen in 10th as much as it did in 9th. The 9th was still very heavy on Space Marine Devastators. Quite a few chaos things stayed on 2 wounds all the way through. You had a wider variety of interceptors a lot in Grey Knights. So you had just 2 wound power armored bodies was a thing that it was relevant and cool if you could just randomly kill. And there's still a bit of that, but I think actually realistically the generic 2 wound Marines are things that are just sort of, if you can't kill them, you're not playing an army that's killing anything at all. And stuff you need to be gunning. Anything that can kill stuff can kill 2 wound Marines at this point.
Yes.
And I think the stuff you're right. The stuff you're gunning for is sort of T6 3 wounds and upwards from there. So I think it's a really insightful question. Actually,
it really is.
I think all the way to the end of 9th, I would still have said it was a meaningful distinction, particularly because Space Marine Devastators was such a fixture of the whole edition. But I think they have, of course, just appeared for the first time in forever in John Lennon's list, but Jack Harp's list, but they've appeared because people can't shoot them in that list. That's the only reason they've come back. So it's like, I think that's a really interesting one, and I think the
really is
probably isn't relevant anymore. No.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think one thing that 9th and now 10th has consolidated was there was an era when I first started playing, indeed, when I was first reading Goonhammer a long time ago, when it was volume damage 2 was getting all things done for a lot of armies. That was the way, right? And game design has been quite targeted since at gradually making just lots of damage 2 not the thing that works into a bunch of different things. And I think 10th has consolidated those lessons.
And 8th was particularly bad for that, where it was
damage 2 was just the profile you had to pick.
Damage 2 was king right up until Marines turned up with Armor of Contempt and whatever the Dreadnought one was. Eternal, and then suddenly it was a problem. But then that skewed the game the other direction because everyone else was they've done a much better job of diversifying what guns are good at what thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess the only time we do see toughness 4 Marines en masse now is those exceptions like Death Company, where they've got another layer of a Feel No Pain.
Yeah, and the -1 damage as well.
The Black Templars.
See them -1 damage. Templars got Feel No Pain.
Yeah, so it's always another layer to kind of make it not the same.
Yeah, which I think is cool. I like that. I don't like it when my aberrants are trying to kill something, which is quite often. But I do still appreciate the range of different things out there. Gordy was asking what's harder, T5 2-up or T6 3-up. It really depends what you're shooting at, doesn't it?
I would say T5 2-up.
Yeah, 2-up saves feel pretty strong.
I think particularly also that T5 to T6, you're still getting the same experience against anything up to strength 9, which is where a lot of the anti-infantry stuff is in that range. So no, if it was T4 2-up or T6 3-up would be a much closer decision. T5 2-up. And also the really big guns are strength 12. So las cannons plus are all strength 12. So the 5 to 6 breakpoint, it matters, but not as much. And 2+ save matters a lot more than that, in my opinion.
Completely, yeah, absolutely. We had a question from Martin in the Discord asking, are Marines broken now? Do we live in a Marine meta?
They're very strong. I think they are stronger than they have been for a while. And I think with Marines, you do kind of always have to add a mental 3 or 4% on top of any win rate you're seeing for them.
Yeah.
And the fact they're a top of yours. I think they're probably a little bit overtuned, but not by a massive, but not like the problematic amount that we've seen things before. I think if you look at that, the Bobby G 6 ballistas and Vindicators list, I think if you just look at that baseline, you go, yeah, that is just a bit too much. Yeah. But not by a spectacular amount. So they'll probably need a little bit of a tweak down come next day at Slate. But I think the results kind of speak for themselves.
What it does mean is we'll see a lot of them, because when Marines are in a good place, we do see a lot of them. So I think it's always, to some extent, a Marine meta. Like we were saying, you always need to be able to hoover up a bunch of Space Marines, or you're not going to get through an event. But I think that's very, very relevant right now, as is having answers to Ultramarines. Go on then, John.
And the real problem is, if they go, right, we'll just change the points, those things that they're making more efficient, you then punish the guys that don't get that new efficiency.
Yeah.
So it's flipping back again.
Well, that's the never-ending puzzle that is balancing.
I mean, Marines balance is always hard, but I think they could literally just hit Bobby G and Calgar and be done with it. Like, I think if we're honest, Vindicators could probably stand to go up a few points. They are just the best option for everyone that has them. So they probably need to go up a little bit. But like, you're talking 5-10 points, not a massive stab. But outside that, I wouldn't change anything beyond small tax on Vindicators and a bit of a jump on Calgar and Bobby G. And I think you can go from there. That's kind of all they need.
Completely. Absolutely. Next question was from Andy, who, congratulations, by the way, Andy, on winning the painting competition with your beautifully painted model. It was really, really cool. If you haven't seen the results and all the lovely entries, there's a video on our YouTube that I did last week. He asked, who finished highest in the ITC rankings of the Plus team? That was our very own Ed Watts. Of course, beautiful maniac that he is, running around doing a lot of events and getting himself out to LVO to get a really strong finish. He went 5-1 at LVO with Anvil Siege Force after Art of War said his list was a meme. So I think Ed's feeling pretty chuffed with himself. He did very well. Always cooking up something weird and doing really well with it. So we're extremely proud of him. And we'll update our trophy cabinet accordingly for Best in Plus ITC very, very soon. Do they get a crown or similar fancy headgear? So, fun story. In previous years when I've won it, Chris has bought me a little trophy. So I'm sure he will do the same for Ed. So I think it's just a case of Chris is very busy, and we'll just need to nudge him and try and get that sorted out. But I'm sure Ed will get something. Ed does always get to wear the Pairings Princess tiara as well at all our teams events. even when is he ever not? Oh dear. Okay.
Lunchtimes.
Yeah. Got a totally unbiased question from longtime Eldar player Pickalax, who asks: 1, what are Wings' PayPal details? 2, does Wings think the Aeldari rules will leak early? The 2 questions are not related in any way, and then there's a little image of a policeman.
Is there an Aeldari codex coming out? I didn't know about that.
Blink 3 times if you can't say anything.
The first thing I'm hearing of it.
Yeah, anyway, moving swiftly on. So we're moving on to Mark Cromwell, who's got a great question, I think, which is: as 2 people that have committed a lot of time to competitive 40k, more than most, do you feel like reading and analysing it has improved your own play directly through exposure to top players and lists, or indirectly through increased drive to compete? Do you find yourself burning out more or less than usual during intense writing periods such as Grotmas, new editions, etc.? I think that's a great question. Wings, perhaps you want to field that first.
It varies a lot. So I think up to a point, yes. It definitely you writing about a lot definitely helps. Like you think about it. However, I would basically say if I was serious about going out and winning some super majors next year, the number one thing I could do to succeed would be to quit writing a weekly column that takes up my whole Monday, Tuesday evenings and play 2 more games of 40k. There isn't a substitute for playing lots of it, and I think it is definitely notable that I am usually going into a tournament quite often with playing the first game with the list I've got in round 1 because I spend so much time on the content that I actually don't get to play as much 40k as I would like to. And it was just definitely notable in Leicester that before Leicester, I had the luxury of I managed to play 1 practice game with my Eldar list before the event, and that made such a difference to how how well I could go through the first rounds.
Completely.
And it sounds ridiculous, but actually just do not have the time to do that a lot of the time. So I'm often just kind of winging it or doing something weird. The other thing, honestly, is I know so many armies rules so well. I quite often end up reminding my opponents of things they can do, the things that they've forgotten that are good about their own rules because they're not optional things. Like I taught someone in round 1 at Leicester that Cipher could fire both his pistols, not just one of them.
Yes.
They shot me with them.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Bam.
Yeah. So I think that's it. In terms of burnout, again, I mean, it can be very busy. It can be a tremendous busy period. It helps that we have a really good writing team at Goonhammer now. So things like Grotmas is not just me. It's an all hand on deck thing. But we have a really solid group of people who can write stuff, including the lovely Tom here, who can contribute. So it's a big team effort to pull together something like that. The only times it gets really burning out are where the meta is really stagnant, and you're right.
Yes.
Competitive innovations. Say the week ago, I think the worst period was 9th edition Grey Knights, where it was just week after week of it's Dread Knights and Interceptors. It's Dread Knights and Interceptors. It's Dread Knights and Interceptors again. It's Dread Knights. Also some Interceptors. And we had the sort of slightly spicy landing 10th got with Aeldari being what they were, but we've not had anything like that since that initial period. So 10th is good. And actually the other thing also with 10th is the lists are a bit easy to just eyeball. Like I can get the list very quickly. The detachment system's great for that. But it also encourages people to try different things. People do tend to settle on one good one, but people try different things. So I think the answer is writing and thinking about it a lot. It will help you get better, but only up to a point. And after a while, you do end up being. I mean, I put my hands up to say I think of myself as I aim to be a really good analyst first, a really really good player second. Like I try and do well. I want to win events. I like winning. But my goal is to have the best understanding of the sort of the meta game of the game, rather than my focus being winning tournaments. If my focus was winning tournaments, number one thing I could do would be stop writing a weekly column that takes a long time.
I think that's completely fair. And I think it's very much echoes my own experience, which is it does take a huge chunk of time, and then it's got to sit with all the other things in your life. And so certainly recent run, I've had a very good few months competitively, and the primary thing has just been between jobs and career change. I've suddenly had extra time to fit a couple more games in, and that makes a huge difference. That's what it really is in terms of levels. And I think the understanding is there, as Wings says, and that is fun. It's fun. You don't end up getting surprised very often in games, to the point that actually if someone does do something I didn't know was going to happen, I'm generally quite happy about it, because it's interesting to learn something new and have something unexpected happen. But I think definitely it's still ultimately the thing that always makes you better is lots of games into good players, and that's where it is. And Con Kakanka, that's a tricky one. It says, how local are metas? Are they generally similar across terrain sets? Does it differ from store to store?
So I think the basic answer is that the UK meta is fairly homogenous, because it's driven by very big events which people can drive to, because we're a tiny little island. The American and Australian metas tend to be have a lot more sort of local quirks to them. Australia, partially because of kit supply, like they do actually have trouble chasing the meta as fast as other regions do, just in terms of getting all the stuff through delivered. And there's a very large geographical distance between the east and west coast. And then America has lots of small pockets where the meta game can twist a bit. Having said that, in the age of the internet and in 10th, where lists are a bit simpler, I think you do see a bit more global homogeneity. The other big divide is GW terrain does drive different things than UKTC and WTC terrain do. And I think you can they're not the same, but you can sort of lump UKTC and WTC together in some of the impacts they have. There is a distinct gap between those. You see lists like the very sort of techie infantry heavy lists that do better in Euro and UK events than they do in the US, whereas in the US a gut punch build can just be a bit better. So there are local factors to play. Terrain does drive that a bit. UK though, fairly homogenous.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the age of the distinct local meta is probably in retreat to some extent because of that. The increasing homogenization of WTC, UKTC, GW terrain, and that has its upsides. It also has its downsides. I won't miss playing on an Orc fort against Admech going second. Those sorts of things had their day in different ways, and I think. Yeah. But at the same time, the flavour of different boards. Do you remember, Scrivo, when there was that one with the metal cans we played on, and you had magnets on your bases, and you put your grots on the can side?
I was like, they're on the building.
So the worst I ever had was a game against Dan Gilbert in the end of 8th on a Realm of Battle. Board.
Your models are just moving themselves.
Well, yeah. So I was playing a silly Wraith Knight list, and he was playing a Gut Punch Ravenwing list. So it very quickly became clear that he was going to win. But we basically both just completely lost it, breaking down laughing, because he was trying to position a land speeder on the nice wide on the edge of on a hill on the Realm of Battle list, and it just kept sliding down the hill again and again and again. We had to put a rubber band underneath it in the end to make it stay, because it just would not behave itself.
Yeah. Unreal. A lot of flavour in those times, but I think probably slightly less. Maybe
if I never play on a Realm of Battle board again, it will be too soon.
Yeah, we might see new forms emerge in the future, but who knows? It's hard to call right now. So as far as local metals for your scene goes, it will ultimately be what kind of armies are popular, who are your best players. That's what you'll get to know playing against them, and that's what you'll be having to go through if you want to win the event.
And I think the scale also makes it well. Jesus, I think there was a stat that was in the. Somebody relayed to me that the LVO preview, I think Mike Brandt said there were more events in 40k last year than there were who were registered as having played an event 8 years ago or something like that.
Yeah, it is getting wild, people.
Truly
booming
numbers. Yeah, it's in a really, the game has grown massively. And that's great. Gives us
it's really good.
Yeah.
More events for the event kings. So that's what we like. All right, everybody. I think that does us for today. So all that remains to say a massive thank you to Wings for coming on and sharing all that knowledge and being great fun to chat with. And we will see you again very soon, I hope, when we've got another meta to dive into. And to you, the listener at home, thanks very much for supporting us. You're all amazing. We'll see you again in a week's time. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.